Oh, okay. I guess Andrew isn't introducing. So welcome everybody to the Paranormal Rangers Crossroads. I think I've said that in the wrong order, but never mind. This is the 40th episode, so it's amazing. Now, Stan and John aren't with us tonight. They're traveling together at the moment. We do have Michelle Miners, who, of course, is always here for us. We have I've got co-host tonight with Del Tobin from Symmetry of Health and Andrew Bartsitz, the Galactic
Hello, everyone.
Historian.
Good to be
And
here. Looking forward to the show.
Really excited to have such a special guest on, James Cross.
James, sorry, everybody, but my internet screwed up. I was supposed to introduce.
That's okay. I jumped in for you. And I'm just going to ask James if he'd like to introduce himself.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, and hello to everybody out there. So James Brost, I live in Sarasota, Florida. The last number of years I've spent, I have my own business, but I've been involved with a few guys people may know. Stacy Brown Jr. has some pretty famous Bigfoot footage from his dad. Filmmaker. He's appeared on some of the larger networks, and RPG was a producer of Finding Bigfoot. And we got together some years back and banded up and decided to investigate and film and go on some adventures, which we did. And I've had a lot of experiences. Kind of set out initially just as a kid. I was the guy that watched In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. I just loved it, right? And some experiences in my family and personally that always had me gravitate to everybody that's watching this, right? We all have this keen interest in this phenomenon, whatever it is, at whatever levels. And I just wanted to be dropped into these areas that we all want to be, right? We all want to see firsthand, what is it, what's going on? And I kind of force-fed my way into that, into those situations, which I've had a number of them, and met a lot of very interesting people and had a lot of very interesting experiences around it. That's me. That's my intro.
I think we're all looking for our unmute buttons here. That's fabulous. So tonight, Michelle, did you want to talk mostly about Bigfoot, or was there anything else you wanted to cover?
Well, when I was discussing with James, you might want to tell us about your documentary that you did and for Amazon Prime Television, and discuss, and you sent a few pictures, and unfortunately my computer, sometimes we have technical difficulties on this show. But I appreciate James coming on because he has a lot of information in regards to this phenomena and ufology and the correlation of things, but also that he has done his own documentary on this phenomena and hit a major network. So James, I'm going to allow you to express that to the audience.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that. And to Michelle's point, I think this is a good one to talk about for this audience. I got involved and met someone named Barry, that part of the Omaha tribe in the Midwest here in the United States. And Barry and his brother have had, it's been going on 2 decades now, interaction with what they call Sitonga, which is Bigfoot. And so when talking to Barry, I got this sense of a real sense of frustration with just the way the white man, the way the Finding Bigfoots of the world, the way people approach the whole subject, because his interactions, as he described them, were some case 45 minutes long. Sometimes it was with Ishagi, which means the old man, the leader of this Bigfoot clan, basically. And the clans he described were, he said it was kind of societal, where the darker haired ones The black-haired ones hung with the black-haired ones, the brown-haired ones. But Ishagi was all white. He was old. Like, he did have all gray hair. And it started with Barry having the Finding Bigfoot show got big many years ago. And his son came to him and said, Dad, we know Sitonga's out there. Why don't we go find him? And it was one of these things where the elders and the tribal councils, like, it's just known. You don't go seek them. We coexist with them. They're an ancient people. We just leave them alone. But he's also very competitive. And when his son said, like, are you afraid or whatever? He's like, all right, let's go do it. And when they set out to do it, they started with what he called the white man way. We started knocking on trees, yelling into the woods. And then he said, you know what? It came to him to pray. Like he said, I'm spiritual. And what's compelling me, my grandmother told me, speak your native tongue to them and pray. And when he began to do that, he had face-to-face encounters that, again, were profound, long-lasting, and a relationship started with him and Ishagi that there's other people that Barry got on a team to investigate it, but it was really Barry that they're connected with. So over 6-7 months, Barry and I would talk, and he told me that he's had everyone from Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who everybody should know, right? The professor here in the States that Jeff Meldrum was up there. Igor from Russia, a researcher, was up there. A number of people were up there, and they wanted to tell their story in the form of a documentary, but I love Barry and his brother, but man, if you piss him off, you're gone. And these guys all just didn't jive with Barry, and they just told him, you guys can go on home. You know, and Jeff Meldrum was up there, and he told Jeff Meldrum, have you seen one? Because Meldrum just was interested in the footprints only. And Jeff Meldrum said no, and they said, well, then you get the F off go home. And he did. And we went up there. We got invited up there, and we did a initial 4 days up there. And we had a whole crew. We got to experience some things and go to places that people never go. And even he would tell us this, look, we have a code name for these areas, because he didn't want the people watching it from the homeland to know where we were and know that we were on these areas. So we had a place called the Belly of the Beast. We had Hard Knocks, was a Camp Hard Knocks, and they had all these nicknames. So afterwards, and I've got to be sensitive here, and I will. Afterwards, he sat us all in this, like, there's these cabins, hunting cabins that we use to do our investigation. He sat us all down. He took all of our phones and said, we're going to show you something. You think you guys have earned it. And he produced a picture that I can't say what it is. I promised him. But if it is what it is, then it ends the whole speculation. It ends the whole conversation. Bigfoot's real. Like, we can drop the mic. That's it. So he asked if he wanted to think about it and pray. You know, they wanted to see our spirit and know our heart. And he said, look, I want you to be the one to tell our story. So we came back up there, but he said, you have to have a much smaller crew, because Sitonga, you can't have the circus coming into town with all these lights and trucks and stuff. So I just brought 4 of us total. And when we went up there, again, first night out, we went to all these different spots, and it's freezing. It's like 19 degrees Fahrenheit. We're parked on this dirt road, 1 a.m, and Barry's telling us, he's like, look, man, I've had some really profound things happen here at this spot. We're like, okay, let's do it. So we roll up. I said, how do you want to do this? And he said, let's do it our way. I shut the cameras off, shut the lights off, and we're going to pray. I said, let's do it. So we're there. Barry begins to pray. And the geography is like this. Here's a dirt road, a slope, and then dead grass, and then this timber, and it's all bare because it's wintertime. Well, in the tall grass starts right at our feet and slopes down about 15 feet. Barry starts praying. Large footsteps come through the grass 10 feet away from us. Someone's walking right there. I don't say anything because I don't want to interrupt Barry, because I know Barry, and if I say something, it might piss him off. So I'm like, just let him do his thing. And he stops praying, though. We all heard it, and we all just stop, and he starts praying again. Footsteps start again. And I just go, hey, man, do you hear that? And he just smiles. He's like, it's them. And he prays again, and we hear another set of footsteps. And then we cut the light on, nothing there. I mean, it's literally right there, and there's nothing there. And so he said, he described it like this. And this is where the paradigm shifted for me, because Barry always said, look, these are an ancient people, but they're also a spiritual people. Like, they can come and go. And since then, I've talked to the Seminole tribe and a medicine man, and they have a name for them. And the name translates to the ones that disappear. Because I was investigating 2 footprints in the mud where there's no other footprints around. And he said, they can be here and then they're not here. So Barry said, look, they'll let you know they're here. You may not see them, but they'll let you know, because they know your heart. They know you've been up here. They want to show you something. Immediately after that, he hits me like this. He's like, hey, man, say something, James. And so I'm like, okay, this is James. I come a long way. These are my friends. Barry's my friend. I just simply come here I want to make contact with you, commune with you. I just acknowledge your presence here. I respect it. Is there anything you can do to let me know you're here? You can throw a rock at me. You can throw a stick at me. You can make a noise, or you can touch me. And right after I said that, just anything you want. Right after I said that, I start shaking on the inside, and I mean vibrating. And I'm like, okay. And I start sweating, and it's 19 degrees out. And I take my hood off and my coat, and I'm like, they're like, Barry's like, you all right? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Something got me. And I'm bent over, and I think I'm just going to faint. And then Barry starts calling out, saying, in both a mix of his native tongue and in English, he's saying to them, he asked, are you a spirit or are you Sitanga? And then he said, listen, I told you, I don't like when you do this. This is my friend. These are my friends. Don't be afraid. Joey's a cameraman. It's just a light. And I'm still shaking. Like, I'm trying to hold my glasses, and I'm shaking, and I'm just pulling it together. And Barry says, hey, let's do this. I'll make a noise, and then you make a noise to Sitanga. So Barry stomps on the ground really hard and said, okay, now it's your turn. The second he says your turn, to the footprints are on the left, footsteps are on the left. To the right of us, we hear like an audible grunt. I mean, right there. And the cameraman's a skeptic. And he goes, what the F was that? And Barry just turned and smiles, and he's like, it's them. And I said, put the light there. There's nothing there. And we're talking feet away from us. And we're trying to reconcile in our heads. We go back to the truck. We're trying to reconcile, like, what just happened. And Barry's just cool as a cucumber. He's like, this is what happens, man. He's like, they're not, as he puts it, they're not going to give you the whole enchilada, but they let you know that you asked. You wanted to know if they were there, and there they were. So I didn't expect anything to happen, right? So I'm taking it all in, just going, man, that was something else. And in parallel, we had RPG, who used to be a producer on Finding Bigfoot. He was with Barry's brother, and they went to this other spot. And sure enough, they start seeing these lights pop up on the horizon. And then they had a blue set that changed colors, but it rose, and they were just these lights. He said there was so many lights that we didn't know what to do with. And but his brother Derek said no cameras. So we did a recreation of it for the film, but the cameraman that was with them was also a skeptic. And you could hear him in the truck afterwards. He's like, I've never seen lights go from white to amber to blue and back. And they even went out there the next day to the same spot just to see if we could debunk it, right? So we went out there, and the ground where they were looking at's flat, and it goes up because they thought maybe they were seeing into the valley and there's house lights that were twinkling through the trees. It's completely blocked. It's completely blocked with a hill. So whatever was popping up in the trees was on this side of the hill facing them. So that was another one that was like profound. And the other thing I'll say is they wanted us to bring some paranormal investigation equipment, right? In the form of like a spirit box and other things. And I didn't put a lot of stock in that either. So they take us to some houses out on the reservation that were over 150 years old, and some medicine man training occurred at one of them, and some bad things happened. And he told us, cut the camera. We're not going to, they can't know where we're at. And he told us this story, and he said, I don't want that story out on camera. I'm like, cool, no problem. We get in this house. It looks like a haunted house from a movie set. It's spooky. It's abandoned. There's no glass in the window frames. And I've got the spirit box, and I'm like, all right, so what do you want me to do? And they're like, just ask questions. So we're standing around, and I hear a voice come through, and it says, get ready. And you can hear the voice, spirit box, you can hear the little radio frequency, and like a little commercials and stuff. But this voice cut through very clearly. It says, get ready. And I said, get ready for what? And it said, sit down. Sit down. I'm standing next to the abandoned window that's broken. I feel on my back. And this is all on camera, by the way, in the film. And I kind of freak out. I don't know what to do. So I'm trying to pull it together, and I do it again, and I feel something on the back of my leg that feels like a pinch. And that happened twice more. And I gave the spirit box to RPG. I said, you know what? I'm done, man. You do this for a while. I'm good. And we get in the truck, and I start to feel the back of my leg get hot. And so we go to the cabin. I just drop my pants and go, is there anything back there? And on camera, on the back of my leg is a red, perfectly round red circle on the back of my leg. And so I'm like, I don't think my wife's going to be real thrilled with this, because she said, look, I don't know what I believe, but from what I understand, you can bring some things back with you in these places. And she worried about it. I'm like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Well, now, I've been touched, and it's leaving a mark on me. And I got zapped, as they call it. And I couldn't take those experiences from that and go, well, there's nothing to it. But the paradigm for me that shifted was, maybe it's a large ape. And then you experience these things that are spiritual or interdimensional or otherworldly, but it's associated with them. And when you talk to people on Barry's team and people in the community, and they tell their stories and you're listening to it, it's all the same. There's tangible components to this. There's a large bipedal creature, but it's not a creature in the sense of you and me or an animal. There is something else here. There's something else here. And the lights associated with the phenomena and the spiritual aspects of it, it all wove together for me in that experience there. Like, it was all, you could call it paranormal, you could call it orbs, you can call it Bigfoot, but it's all wrapped together, right? So that's in that film. It's called Sitanga, Bigfoot, Spirits, and Faith. And it's on Amazon. That kind of documents the journey we had with them. And Barry and I become friends, and he's dying to have me come back up because there's other things on the reservation that are associated with this that he wants us to explore. So someday I'll get back there. I'll get back there and do that.
That's a
But I wanted
wonderful
to,
narrative.
yeah, and you guys can jump in if you have any questions on that or anything. Yeah.
You know, James, when we met up at we were both speakers at a conference, a Bigfoot conference up in Toronto, Canada, and it was the second annual, and we both have a friend, Judy Sakanay, and it was really interesting when Mike Patterson was there, and we were standing by each other just to support your story. We were talking with a couple other Bigfoot investigators, and I had won in a raffle. Remember the footprint that Mike had casted? Well, the replica copy of that. I had won that.
Nice.
And a marble that came through the vortex kind of thing. It appeared to him. So that was, and I was standing there. We were taking photos with he and I, and all of a sudden I felt hot like you, and I felt like uncomfortable. And I was like, what is going on? And all of a sudden something told me to turn, and appeared a shadow, a huge shadow of a man. And all of a sudden I just said to the group that was standing there, I go, did you guys see that? Did you guys see that? And all they did is they stayed quiet and calm, and they smiled. And, and he says, well, they're just letting you know that footprint's probably theirs, and now you're an owner of it. So therefore, and and then afterwards I felt a healing power within that,
Yeah. Isn't that wild? And I think for someone that hadn't experienced that, I experienced that. And then right after that, we got back from the Midwest, and there's a group that has independent filmmakers, Small Town Monsters. They have a bunch of independent films around the subject. I mean, they've got like 60 on Amazon. They really do it well. Well, they had a group that wanted to come to different areas of the country, and it's called Beyond the Trail of Bigfoot. And they interview with teams that investigate. And so we knew a couple of the guys there, and they said, hey, let's get together. You guys take us to a spot in Florida for one of our YouTube documentaries. So Stacy knew a spot up in kind of close to northern Florida, and we went up there, and it happens to be the coldest night on record in Florida, right? So I left Nebraska, I come back, and within a month I'm back up, and it's like 19 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're Florida guys. I'm a wuss, right? So I'm like, this is freezing. We go out, and we have two groups, and we send one group up the road with lights on, and we have specific instructions that say, don't do any knocks, don't do anything, just walk, and then we're going to follow you in the dark 5 minutes later, pitch dark. So in case you stir anything up, we're going to have our cameras and be in the dark. Well, they go ahead of us, and they walkie-talkie in. Okay, we're 5 minutes away. We start walking. We're just walking, and we hear on a tree like echo through the night, and we stop. And one of the guys is in charge of the Bluff Creek project, and he's like, "That was the clearest, loudest knock I've ever heard." And I'm like, "That right?" Like we're looking around at each other, like, "What else could it be?" So we called them. We were like, "Hey, did you guys just do a knock?" And they said, No. We said, don't do any knocks till you get up here. I said, I know, but did you just do a knock? They said, no. Why? And I said, we just heard the clearest knock. We walk another minute, other side of the road, even louder, just echoing into the cold night. And we're like, this is crazy. Like, you just don't expect it, right? We get up there, we meet up, we are excited, we talk about the knock, we all walk back to the cars. People are milling around the cars and talking. And one of the kids from their group, his name was Tate, him and I were standing, and we're facing the tree line, which was 30 feet away, pine trees, right? Tall pine trees. And we're just sitting there talking, and he has an audio recorder in his pocket still running. Everybody's got their cameras down. We're just talking. We see a blue orb ball just shoot through the top of the trees, zip, and just take off. And you hear both of us on the audio recording going, what the F was that? And then everybody turns around, they cut the cameras on. They're like, what did you guys just see? and we're both I'm trying to say, well, it couldn't be a shooting star that was in the tree line. And he's saying, does Florida have gigantic lightning bugs? I'm like, we don't have them, and it's freezing. But this thing was a blue ball of light that it didn't just fall. It was zigzagging and then took off and just disappeared, like right there in front of us. Blew me away. I mean, I've never seen, with in the Midwest, I felt these things. I got touched. I got zapped. We heard the footprints. We heard the grunts. But I saw a blue softball-sized orb in front of us, zigzag. And I had somebody else right with me that didn't believe that. They thought everything associated with Bigfoot was flesh and blood. And Stacy, who took us up there, said, listen, guys, this area, lots of sightings. We had a guy that had been there since he's been a child telling us about these encounters. He said, but there's always lights associated with it up here, always. And so we hear these crystal clear knocks, and then 10 minutes later, we see this orb. I don't know how else to describe it, but it was clear as day. So that also was another association with Bigfoot that was,
You were talking about not flesh and them being beings of energy that can come and go. Can you expand on that a little bit? Are they multidimensional existings? Are they stepping between realms? I mean, what is your view on that?
It's a good question, Andrew. It's a really good question. One that those situations had me asking the same ones, and I will tell you this: like we went to the Conjuring house for 5 days, and it had just sold. And the old owner was our friend, and the new owner hadn't taken over. So the old owner says, do what you guys want. You're the last full documentary film crew to come through under my watch. And I say all that to say this, that the experiences I had there, the experiences I had in Nebraska, the experiences I had in Northern Florida and other places were different, but there was certain phenomena that was the same. So it led me to believe that whatever we want to call this, a phenomena isn't just separate onto its own, or Bigfoot and UFOs are, and those are just words, right? Those are names we've given them, but this phenomena is all encompassing. And I therefore, I think there's a veil that is, whether you want to call it a dimension, whether you want to call it a veil, whether you want to call it another world, whatever, something is able to come and go through that veil and has abilities that we don't, through physics, understand yet. And they're related. I'm just convinced that somehow these things are all interconnected and related. And if it's another dimension, I talk about a little bit on the film that, you want to call it interdimensional, fine. If you want to call it,
it's just another word. It's a word that helps people define in their own mind something that is beyond our realm of physics and belief. Somehow they're visible and invisible simultaneously and are able to do all sorts of unique phenomena. Did you have a spiritual journey before this? What was your journey growing up? Was spirituality a part of your life, or was it something that grew later?
It always had been a part of my life, clearly, because I'd been recovering. I was all my brothers and sisters, like all of us, had problems with drugs and alcohol growing up. We just were wired that way. We were wild. And spirituality.
Where did you grow
up? My dad was in the Air Force, so I lived in Alaska, Nebraska, Arizona, like multiple times.
Army party.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we that was part of the healing for me, was that spiritual part to kind of mend whatever was eating at me. And I talk about that. I'm very vulnerable in the film. I lay it out, like who I am, who I'm not, in this film. But it had always been with me. But I think the evolution of the phenomena and it being something more otherworldly it's just something until you experience it. Like a lot of people are online warriors where they watch Look,
Yep.
everything. I don't care if it's politics, medicine, food, and working out. We get into these echo chambers and start going down rabbit holes of watching certain things on YouTube, whatever.
Yeah.
More than maybe we should just go, what can I position myself to where I can experience something? And
Right.
let me try to not be like a prerequisite that I'm a believer, therefore I'm going to try to make stuff up, but just kind of be neutral but open, like an open heart, open mind,
Mhm.
open spirit to go into these places. And the other thing I've done is I've tried to find places that have interactions with whatever phenomenon, but they aren't interactions like, well, this one thing happened once. It's where decades has had something happen. The pictures I sent Michelle were there's a gentleman up in northern Florida that I could spend 5 hours telling you his story, but I won't. But it would be along the lines of more alien abduction, if you want to call it anything, but it's so vast, spent causing his family to get a divorce, but they still love each other because whatever this is doesn't want them married, causing them to adopt kids because whatever this was wouldn't allow them to have kids. Um, Interviewing the family, interviewing the ex-wife who's in tears, going, "Yeah, I love him, but it won't let us be together." And I thought she might say, "No, he's a crazy meth head. He's making this all up." No, and the adult children are like, and and we experienced again the same thing where I walked in that house day one. We walked in, and I was showing somebody around, and everybody else was outside, and she starts to faint, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Oh, I just feel this, in my head and this and that." I'm like, "Sit there." And I walk in the kitchen to where she just left. I have shorts on. All the hair on my calves goes, it's static electricity all across my calves and moves up to my head. And I'm like, same thing I felt in Nebraska when they touched me. Same thing I felt at the Conjuring house when we had a flash of light above us in the middle of the day. Everybody's hair went up on their forearms and heads. Um, I've experienced this in thousands of miles apart, and I'm supposed to be investigating whether it's ghosts or aliens or Bigfoot, but yet I have the same experience. That's what I'm trying to say is like, how do I put that in a bucket, right? I
So
can't.
it's fair to say that these experiences catalyzed you into a newer expression of your journey of expressing spirit for yourself.
Yeah, it's very easy, Andrew, for someone that is to go back to watch all this stuff as compelling as it is, and then to shut it off because it doesn't fit into the box
Yep.
of the world, and go, very compelling. I'm going to leave it alone. But once you experience it,
Right.
now you're in the box. Now your perception, my perception changed of what's possible and what isn't possible, and just knowing that I can't unknow it. I guess,
Yeah.
right? So
You're an entangled observer using
yeah,
physics, quantum physics experiences, and you can't unentangle that observance, even though it appears the beings can be unentangled observers,
yeah,
non-influential and yet observing of us, meaning they can go in and out of the rules of physics, and wherever they go is, wherever it is. We don't really know. I have my own suspicion, like you, that there's a parallel reality stacked on top of each other, and that our range of consciousness, visualization, and expression through the five senses and the six senses is limited to a particular spectrum of our ability to observe seen and unseen, and they can step out of our ability to see the seen and the unseen world and enter another pocket dimension, pocket reality, whatever language you want to give it. It's something that isn't visible for us.
yeah. I mean, well put,
Mhm.
and that's that's about as far as I can get with it. And so I will tell you this: when we did the Conjuring house investigation, when we left there, there was a gentleman that was part of the original group that did the original seance where the lady was thrown 5 feet back, and
Mhm.
his name's Carl. And so Carl asked all of us, if you experience anything when you get back, give me a call. So I get off a plane and we drive a couple hours to my brother-in-law's house. And I think it was like his daughter's birthday. Like we were supposed to go there the weekend and hang out. So we go to his house. We got like his son's room for the weekend, put our bags down. We go downstairs and we're sitting out by the pool and barbecuing. And then the topic comes up. So how was the filming up there? And I'm telling him about it. Right when I start to talk about 5 minutes in, I don't feel good, man. I'm burning up. And I'm thinking I don't know what this is. Maybe I got COVID on the plane. That's what I thought, right? Maybe, right? Comes on fast. You feel terrible. So his wife's a nurse, and we go in and we take my temperature, and it's 102. And I'm like, I literally had to stop talking and said, something's wrong. So she gives me a COVID test, doesn't show, says negative. I go upstairs in his room, and for the next 24 hours, most of it was delirium, these really crazy back pains and spasms and sweating. And then I even got up in the middle of the night to get some water and took I took tests until the next morning. It just stopped, completely gone. So I called Carl on that and he said, maybe, and so my wife saw this and said, look, I don't think I want you doing this anymore,
How did you get into filmmaking in general, led then into the paranormal filming?
That's a good question. So I was sponsoring an event that was a place here in Florida called the Crowley Nature Museum. Crowley Nature Museum is in the Myakka River State Park area where the skunk ape kind of like this video, there's some world famous video of stuff there and all these reports. And there was a Halloween night and Stacy Brown was there taking people out. He took Finding Bigfoot there when they came to Florida. And they called it an undisclosed location. So we went there. I started talking his ear off and he said, listen, I'm going to make a documentary this next year out here. You want to come check it out? And I said, absolutely. I would love to. So what happened was when he called me and said, hey, we're going to be doing this documentary, next thing you know, I'm getting film permits. Next thing you know, I'm getting housing. I just had a knack for producing. And so we made this film together. And then once they said, hey, why don't we
you had no previous production experience before that?
Zero.
I knew it.
And so then when we banded together and wanted to do some films, I'm a headhunter. I'm a recruiter by trade. So I had a knack of researching, finding people, getting a relationship with them, investigating their case. And I was I gravitated more towards like Barry in the Midwest, where he's had 18 years of this experience, or David in North Florida that's had 20 years experience and lost his family. And he was actually featured on a show with Ben Hansen, the former FBI guy, is a host, and he had a UFO series. He still is doing series now. They investigated David's house and had these crazy things happen. And you're like, well, it's Hollywood. I don't know if they made it up. So I get a hold of Ben and he's like, no, dude, that stuff happened. Be careful with that house, man. There's something going on there. But my point being, I'm more interested in people that have had, even as a human interest story, their life dramatically altered and their families' lives forever changed by some form of this phenomena for many, many years. I want to talk to them and get to know them and maybe experience what they're experiencing. That's more interesting to me. And where my heart really is with the indigenous people, because as I explain in my film, we've got written history, oral history, illustrated history from indigenous homelands across the country that I've talked to. Well, they didn't have the internet or libraries 500 years ago, but they all had a hairy man. So how did that happen, right? They didn't say, hey, listen, some white dudes a couple hundred years down the road are going to really flip over this stuff, man. So draw an owl, draw a cougar, and draw a hairy man and give it a name, whatever name you want, and have a similar story so it all checks out, right? How does that happen from Canada to Florida to Oregon? How? And there's something very I don't know how to put it. There's a truth there, and it's an ancient truth. And when you experience it and you talk to them, you know. So I don't like to buy into the Hollywood version of anything or the product that's become phenomena with the labels and the embellishment and the egos, which I found, as Michelle probably knows in her experience too, the biggest problem I think this whole uh, paranormal, whatever you want to call it, world has is each other. Because if someone doesn't believe, they don't believe. It's the ones that believe that say, no, what you're seeing is BS. What I'm seeing is real. Or I've looked at your stuff. It's all BS. Uh, and now all of a sudden they know Bigfoot's diet. They know Bigfoot's grooming habit. Like they think they know something about it. It's like, listen, we're talking about something that nobody. If and the other thing is if Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Sitonga, whatever you want to call it, was just flesh and blood, we would have had one by now. Like that wouldn't have been an issue. So there's part of them that control what we see and what we don't see. I'm firmly believe. And a lot of it's your heart. A lot of it maybe intentional, I think, reveals themselves when they want to at times. I don't think a lot of it's by accident. Because if if there's a being out there that can do that, then we're not going to outsmart that being, and trick it with trail cams and bait and knocking on trees like that. You think that's really going to, produce this, I surprised a sleeping bear by using bear bait. It just, for me, my experience says it doesn't work like that. And Michelle knows with Mike Patterson, Mike and I have become friends over the years. And we talk about some of the things we experience that, it parallels, right? Like I told Mike, hey, this happened. He's like, well, this happened. And it's the same thing, but it's like, that doesn't square up with anything tangible. It's something that I can't explain by flesh and blood, and so people, and then there's another group of Bigfooters that get mad at people that say it's spiritual, right? And like they hate them. It's like political parties on the opposite side. It's like, so I think that's probably a big challenge for this field in general. And then as we speak, here in the U.S., they've got congressional hearings, a second major congressional hearing on UFOs happening right now.
Right.
So it's just funny to hear the questions they ask. I kind of turn it off because I'm like, this line of questioning, how are we going to get anywhere with this?
Nowhere, because that's just political theater to help the grandstanding of the next 60 days occur. Because everything's
right. You still there, Andrew? I think you cut
journey.
out.
So, hold on one second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you.
So you went from being a headhunter to filmmaking. Do you have your own film production company? Have you fully jumped into that?
Well, we did Outcast Paranormal, and I believe in speaking plainly. What I found was each of us had talent, each of us had a vision, and mine didn't match theirs. The group I was with was more inclined to be reality TV stars, and I was more inclined to be like, I'm kind of nobody from nowhere, and I want to be the everyman that like has had experiences that warrant me investigating this. Let's get off the couch with me. Let's just see what happens. Let's go check it out and just be an open channel to it. But we're much better friends apart like this than we were together because it started to get heated, right? And I thought this is like my hobby that maybe we're trying to turn into something bigger, and I didn't want that to be something where I found myself getting upset with, because as my wife knows, and even my daughter's like, I can't not do this. I mean, I work for myself, thank God, and I've got my own business, and it buys me the time to do these things. So I'm working on my next couple things to do, and I'm not interested in, trying to make a buck. I'm interested in everything I talked about and experienced. Like, it won't leave me alone. And Michelle knows how this goes. I'm sure maybe other ones do. I can't put it down if I wanted to because it won't let me. And I'm being
Yeah.
pushed, I'm being pulled, I'm being drugged to the next thing. And I connect with people like Michelle and we talk, and it's like, wait, there's the special connect, like there's a kinship here in our experiences. And I meet with others that are the same thing. And I think that's not by coincidence. And so you just have to find your tribe within this phenomena and be kind of the pioneers that venture together to explore it, but explore it with open hearts, open minds, and in that spirit. There's a spirit to the exploration, I think, and it's not about attention seeking, for
Mm-mm.
me anyway. In fact, I was very hesitant. The guy that edited my film, he's like, you need to be the center of it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that, man. He said, no, 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 Barry, there, it's you, like Barry and the Omaha tribe, it's you they've connected with, and they're connected with Sitonga. That's the story. All these other white dudes, film companies have been kicked off the res. They chose you. So you kind of need to tell your story. And I'm like, okay. So I did. But yeah, so for the future, uh, there's a number of things I have available that I just have to try to put together. There is a property up near Mount Shasta that's a 400-acre ranch that's been in this family for generations. And when the father, who's dead now, he died, he was 90 something, he passed away, and the mother, I think, is still alive, but I think the daughter owns it now. When her parents were homesteading that, they were having something huge stomping around their little homestead there, and they had to start putting their food up in the trees, way up in the trees, because it was getting stolen. But then they were having missing time. They were having, it was like Skinwalker Ranch, very similar. All this stuff was happening, to a point where one night she took her kids, when things were going off at the ranch, she took her kids to drive into the small town to get out of there. And they stopped at this little restaurant that was open. And when they looked at it from the outside looking in, um, there was nobody there, but it was open. So they went in and used the bathroom. When they came out, it was full of people, but from a different era that couldn't see them and interact with them.
Mhm.
And she just freaked and left. But there's a bunch of different things like that. That's not just one thing or the other. And there's craft and then they send me a picture of a glyph, the spiral at Skinwalker.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, they said, well, there is a glyph on the property. And I thought, for some reason in my head, I thought it'd be like little paintings on a rock or something. But it's this 50-foot by 50-foot ancient glyph that's in a spiral. And the house is like 100 yards away from it. And it's ancient. And then apparently the father knew the one of the elders in the adjacent territory that on the homeland there. And so they became friends and they would interact, but both have passed on. But my goal is this: been invited to go. No one's really investigated it. I'd like to go up there, investigate, but also, again, the indigenous world, it compels me. So I'd like to bring those two together and get their perspective on what this is and what this isn't, and investigate on the ground, the white people, what this is and what this isn't, and see how those worlds meet. And the same with Judy in Canada and Mike. You know what I mean? You've got Mike, Judy, and how those worlds meet as well. But that, to me, you can't have one without the other, because the indigenous people that's what the relationship, I think, was meant for, and initially for human interaction, and then we all show up, and we have
I
the
like
same.
to
Yeah.
I like to commonly say that human beings have to get off of unnatural city living and get back to natural living with nature. Now, the natural living with nature is a journey one has to take away from the world of civilization and get back to the nature of elements and the relationship that you have with your sixth sense of awareness, and how the forest and the trees and the all the different things are interacting with spirit that is you, the way we were naturally meant to be unborn, traveling between the different realms of observation and creativity. And beings like Sasquatch and a number of others that are Sasquatch adjacent species, they have been in our culture since the dawn of human beings. I will also say some came from other worlds, part of the migratory transition of beings that don't need physical craft to travel from one place to another. Have you been to Mount Shasta before? Do you know that area well? I know it very well.
I don't. I mean, I've been up there when I was a kid because we actually drove from Alaska down to the States a couple times,
Okay.
which is in the in the Chevy Chase vacation station wagon. My dad had one of those. So, but I never as an adult spent any time there.
If you're gonna go there and do any significant filming, my advice to you is arrive early and do your spiritual work as soon as you get to arrive, and let yourself settle into the work there. The energies of that mountain can be very, very harsh and very, very opening. It's just introducing yourself to the energies and letting the energies introduce you to yourself, and then letting them know, the ancestors of the land, what your purpose is, and share wisdom with them. And oftentimes they'll be very helpful. But also note, when you go there, if the Rainbow Kids party groups are there, try not to film because it'll be just full of demons.
Oh, wow.
Literal things. They have really destroyed that city in the last 4 years because
Oh,
they have
no.
these parties up there that are paid. The sex trafficking is terrible, the drugs are terrible, everything is terrible, and there's nothing anyone can do to kick them off because they're just on random parts of the mountain and 2,000 kids show up for a month.
You know, I think the owner may have alluded to something like that. And she said there was a time of the year that was specifically to go up there. And she had two spots up there that she wanted to take us. So I guess in parallel, it'd be her property, the indigenous, and then Mount Shasta itself going up. And,
Right.
That kind of triangle of investigation. So we'll see. I've got a number of other things. If I was rich, Michelle, we'd be out there making movies like right.
Exactly.
That's all we would do.
Right.
We'd just go.
It's just when you get there, plan extra time to do your version of making energy sacred and make yourself known to the ancestor of the land. It makes a huge difference because that land is so challenged with people who don't care.
Yeah. Which
Okay.
unfortunately
Well,
is
from the Native American perspective, there are tribes up there that are told not to go past the tree lines into the base and where it's barren, because they really believe there are entities that will
There are.
abduct you, and they have seen this through their history for millennia. And the elders tell you, don't go past this certain area, this boundary. And there have been a few, and they've encountered and had negative experiences. But there's reason for that knowledge that's being shared by our elders. So that's something to look into, James, as you explore that mountain.
And that's where I want to go first, is always with the indigenous people are part of the land. It's not like a guide that showed up, some white dude telling you, well, here's the trails and here's the history. I want someone that's part of the history, right? And hear what they say about it, because that's where, for me, where I knew it when it's just something in your heart, and then you experience it with them, and it's hard to go back and go. It's just hard to go back. Like, it's an area I'm going to keep exploring as I go along, because I know that there's a truth there that isn't available to just the average guy walking around out there trying to find something or look for something.
Hey guys, I gotta go. I've got my next meeting that I get to get. Really good talking to you. I look forward to talking to you some more. I think we have an interesting area that we could explore, the philosophy of what the other worlds can be like and how through a spiritual journey we can perceive those worlds too.
It's good meeting you, Andrew. We definitely will talk.
Definitely. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Here.
James, it's really interesting, having come from the Skinwalker Ranch group that I was there for several years. I was asked by the owner to be on his show, and I, being who I am from I'm like you, I didn't want really the exposure, but I also wanted to be a purist in my investigation and research. And through a vision thing I had with him, as I was looking past him, I was seeing things that were not for me. It was darkness, a lot of darkness, and I thought that's not where I'm going. And exploiting the indigenous culture around the area, who have their own belief systems, and I do have a relationship to that tribe. What's interesting is they really feel like it wasn't brought there. The Skinwalker lore was not brought there by any type of Navajo or anything. They don't have that in their history. They said that was made up, possibly by the Calvary back in the time. So every time I'm expressing that, because I've interviewed a lot of natives up there, they said no, that's not in their history. That came about 1869 when that lore was exposed to in the non-indigenous culture. And so it kind of spread like wildfire, like news does today on the internet, kind of the conspiracy thing. But the natives don't have that in their history, that the Navajos cursed. They had conflicts because the military had gotten scouts to scout out, runaway tribal members that wanted to protect their homeland but protect themselves. That's about the history that they have. And the Skinwalker lore is something that they said it was made up by the non-indigenous culture. And so when I had that little vision as I was standing there talking to the owner of the ranch, I just thought, I don't want to be a part of the darkness, but I really want to shed the right information that needs to be said to the audience, to people outside that. So I said no. And people probably thought I was crazy on the ranch to say no to that opportunity. But I'm in this place. So the reason why the Rangers and I decided to do the show, along with, Andrew and the UK group, Laura, and, and be able to talk about this and have the spiritual side of it, because Dale and Laura bring that aspect to it, as well as does Andrew, that there is a spiritual side to this phenomena, like you and I experienced over there in Toronto, and seeing it. I came back with a different perspective of the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and Judy is teaching me the medicine way, because I'm a part of her tribe. I'm a Ojibwe. I'm an Anishinaabe. I am of Chippewa clan, and didn't know a lot about that clan, but I am learning a lot. And the power of the matriarch there, and the healing power, how they interact with the Bigfoot as a healer, as opposed to something being, as a person of the Sasquatch clan being, it's always fear, and they're abducting, they're killing people. That is not what the natives up in Toronto experience. They're healers, and the medicine is there. And I felt it. I came home so alive after that experience we had up there.
So can I ask a question, James? So you say your first experience, you began to pass out. Was there a point in time where you started to build a zone of trust with Bigfoot, where there was points where you started to trust them, trust what you were doing, trust being there? How was it for you going into that, from that experience of passing out to going and having that connection with them?
Good question, Dale. A few people that had done it longer than I have all said the same thing, and I think even Michelle touched on it, that there's getting rid of the fear, and having knowing that you're protected, or knowing that you can be an ally or you can be an adversary depending on what your intentions are. I think it's setting intentions is the big deal. Setting intentions is big. And when you're just a knucklehead, you show up and you're like, okay, it became clear to me that once you experience that, then everything you've heard and the people you're talking to, it's like, I get it now. Like, you have to set the intentions. And I was like, what does that even mean? But it's true. You set your intention and communicate, and even audibly, here's what I'm here for, and even offerings, things like that. Just I'm trying. This is my way, and my heart. This is my way of saying hello, friend. And you kind of know, you get that feeling, like that peace where there's nothing negative's going to happen here. I just want to be open to having some kind of experience.
Because I can really feel that with you speak in such a respect, and it's like you have a level and a self-love about yourself which kind of protects you, because you know who you are, you know what you are, and you know what you're doing, and you have that inspiration and passion. And when you go to these various different places, spaces, you're going there with that faith connection that I'm fine, I'm going to be fine. Maybe I'll have a bit of rocks thrown me here and there, but there's always that source awareness and faith I can feel through your words, that you're doing this out of your own self and for yourself, out of love. And this is great to see. You're not following the other paths where people go for money, go for this and that. You can really feel your own authentic self coming through when you speak.
I think you nailed something there, where going through that, it became, I had business associates. I was working this contract, and I'm dealing with the vice president of whatever that I'm technically working for. And they offered me a job, and I turned it down, and they said, why? And I told them exactly why, that I do this. This is what I want to do in between my work time. Everybody was fascinated by it. So if I ever have calls with them now, they're like, so how's the filming going, man? Like, they want to know, so what did you really experience? Like, everybody's got that curiosity, but to be able to say, look, this is who I am. Like, I don't care if it's a neighbor or whatever, I'll tell them I'm that guy. Like, this is something I'm very interested in, but here's why. And some people, it's interesting, the reaction. You'll show them some of the things you experience, and they're like, you could see the look on their face, like, so there's something, this is kind of this is real. Like, you're telling me this is real. And then you could see they really quickly want to put it back in the bucket of, I want to, get back to the regular world and what everybody's supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be thinking and feeling. And once you know that that's not me, and you can own that, then when you set an intention, it's real. You don't have to be like an actor. I will say one more thing. When we were up on the reservation there, Barry was telling me that there was another guy who was Indian, but he was from a different area, and he had befriended Barry and really wanted to get on the, Barry's turf and check all this out. But he knew, Barry found out later that the guy had bad intentions, and they found out why. And he said Sitonga knew that coming in, because once they were at the spot, a branch, and I mean a branch this big around, like 7 feet long, was hurled at the guy, landed right at his feet. And he showed it, like, he had the lady he was with, his girlfriend, he hid behind her. And it just, like, the whole thing exposed him. But there was also, he did have a bad intention. It was something to do with, he wanted to get something from there for himself to get credit for. And it was like, Sitonga already knew, Bigfoot already knew, like, that guy's not a good egg, man. We're going to scare the shit out of him right here.
Hey, Dave, do you want to show those photos and explain what those photos are? I've got 3 of them that I was able to upload.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to have you back on.
Okay. So, yeah. And what I can do in the future is I can put together maybe a little 5-minute presentation on some of this stuff and walk you through it. But I'll give you this one. This one's a neat one to me. This is a guy I met who they'd come out and investigated a big show. This guy, if you knew him, he don't care anything about fame, fortune. This is a gentleman who got divorced over this. This gentleman, what you see here is a steel ball, like a brushed steel ball. And all the decades of these things coming for him, his children, he tries to get pictures of. He took me out in his garage, and he had a Tupperware storage bin, the big ones.
Yeah.
And it was stacked neatly with burnt out cell phones, hundreds. And he said, if I film them and catch a picture, then they burn out my phone. So I'll set it up like this, and I'll try to make it quick. He puts either water. He got this theory of putting a steel ball where he can take a picture of a reflection behind him, and it goes through like maybe this water jug to slow down the imagery to catch it. Like he's tried everything to trick him, to catch him. Well, this day, he called me and he was FaceTiming me, and he was very upset. David is not afraid of anything. So David says that there's different crews of these beings that it's almost like they're monitoring him his whole life and his family, almost like it's their job. Sometimes it's just like they need to be there, and he knows when they're there. You can't see him, but it's almost like that fuzz or static or audibly you hear stuff and a feeling that they're there to check on him, like just monitor whatever. So this day he was very upset and wouldn't go back in his house. And I'm like, David, are they scaring you? And he put it to me like this. He said, this group is a group of assholes. And he sends me these pictures about a week or two later, and he said, hey, I found these in my phone. Like, I don't even remember this. And I looked, and it was the same day that he was very agitated. So when he came back in his house, this is looking into this reflective ball, and I've been right there in that spot he's in. There's no phone in his hand to take the picture. David is a loner. There's no one that's going to like help David do anything. If you notice behind David, you see a bright light and a kind of a dark image behind him, right? If you can make David out, he's in the white t-shirt and his head's kind of leaning back, and there's like a black rim around him. Well, that black rim is them. And if you go to the next picture.
Okay, let me see if I've only got 3 of them. So here we go.
Yeah. The next picture, that black mass is all around David, and it's kind of holding him like a kid in its arms. Like, I've been in his bedroom at that spot. That's a big blobby black mass. And then if you go to the next picture.
I hope I can capture that one. That might be not the only one. No, we got that one. Let me see. That's the one he's blobby. That's about 3 of them I could get.
Okay. There's one more where that light is in the center of the black mass and David's gone. It's just light where David was.
Wow.
And he told me, I'm like, what is that? He's like, that's how they take me. And David bought tasers. So when he thought they were taking him, he would tase himself so he wouldn't. And I said, how did that work? He said, it didn't. After the first time I did it, they disabled the tasers. So that's the place where I had all the static on my calves shoot out, go up my head. Wow. He has this guy. We filmed there, and on the film got corrupted, right? It's like these things, like you're not going to catch us on camera. I've got some other pictures that are a little more, there are clear images of a black hooded thing and a little kid that looks like, but it's got like almost a mask on, like a coyote almost mask, bad. And then one standing above it with almost like a wolf's mask, but they're bad masks. And he said, that's the doctor, that's the whatever, and that's their kid. And he's like, they come in like poorly fitting costumes at times. I interviewed his son, who's an adult, and his son said, I just remember looking out the window and it looked like a Muppet was asking me to open the window.
Wow.
And the daughter said, I woke up one time as a kid, the room was full of butterflies and moths like smoke. It was so thick, I had to crawl underneath the bottom to get out and not breathe them in. And on and on and on. I left him with like Skinwalker, at Skinwalker, they have those meters to detect. What are they detecting? Which rays are they? Maybe it's gamma rays. I'm not sure. I left one of those in his house, and I said, just monitor this. This is a static environment. Like you can have some ebbs and flows, but if it gets above this, like the radiation, it'll be very dangerous. There's no reason you'll have this in your house. I'll have to find it somewhere. He sends me a video of it going off. The level is 51 is about the limit to where it could be natural. This was at 257, and the alert saying call call agency or something like that. Like it's an alert to call somebody. And that was just sitting next to his bed. And so these energy waves and these things are something else. And I need to go back there and try to film again, but it did whatever was there last time. There's a whole series of events happened that broke that our filming up, which again, I found he warned us like, very calmly, like they may not let you do this. And anyway, that's another one that had some crazy experiences with, and that's just a few pictures of. He's got hundreds we could go through. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on the show. Definitely, this has been very inspiring. I'm blown away by your experiences and what you've caught on camera, and your interpretation is of what you've done out in the field is not about you, but it's about sharing the knowledge, the information to the world, because we do a lot of interpretation in our investigations of the paranormal, the lores, the phenomena, and I don't think we can always interpret everything. And that's why it's so important to have the spiritual side with us all, to understand that there is an interconnection. Is just, it's not all about seeing it with our eyes, but the feeling and what you've experienced with you feeling the phenomena and the power that it brought you and changed you forever. And now you're hungry. You're hungry.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I wasn't, because I just, there's some nights I lay awake and I'm like, man, and you get these like there's nobody I've met in this that I can't call friend. And I noticed there's a lot of people that maybe I've been involved with that would burn bridges. And it just seemed weird that there's a lot of that when you're trying to document stuff. Like all these people make enemies, like these best friends, and they're like, now they're the worst enemies. And I'm like, that really sucks. But there's everyone I can call friend, and that's the other part of it. Is I'm a relationships guy. I love to connect the dots, but I never burn a bridge, right? And respect is number one. Like I'm built for it. Like there's nothing. When we were up on the reservation, they're tough, man. Barry and his brother were tough, and they talked a lot of smack and challenged you a lot. And I'm fine with it. It was all love. And they knew, like, we passed an initiation, I guess. Like I've been through an initiation with them, and now we're like brothers, right? So that's all good. And I think that's part of, you have to be built like that as well. Like, if you're going to be dealing with a lot of different personalities, man, and some of them are out there, but it's, for me, it's easy to navigate. Oh, there's something interesting about everybody, right? So it's like, I'm fine with it, all of it. I'm fine with all. I just want to get out there again and do some cool stuff. So I'm itching. I'm due. I'm overdue. So we'll see what happens next.
I think you're like a lot of us here. You carry those Indigenous teachings, even though you don't know it in your heart. And it's those Indigenous teachings that modern white man has lost touch with, really. We've lost a lot of heart connection. We're living in cities without that human connection too. And we know, the four of us sitting here and Andrew and those in the chat, that it's that heart connection, that intention to do no harm. And the fact that the Indigenous knew about Bigfoot or recognized Bigfoot and didn't want to do any harm to Bigfoot, recognized them as their ancestors, not just Bigfoot, but many other paranormal beings as well. And you seem to have taken that on board. Somewhere it's in your DNA, and somewhere that you're carrying that round with you in your field, in your frequency. And I'm absolutely sure that's what they're picking up on, that heart-spaced awareness that you have.
It's a good point. I noticed that every place we went, I always experienced that same static, that had to where literally it was, whether it was it always start with my arms or legs, but would move up to my head to where literally I'm covered in this energy right now, and I don't know what it is. And only the first time when I was at the house that I just showed you that it freaked me out. The other times it was like, I know this feeling. It became kind of like here it is again, but you're in different parts of the country, in different whether it's a woods or it's a house or whatever. And so I'm like, so I don't know what that is, but it's something, and I guess embrace it, right? You can embrace it or not. But I just want to know. I just want to go. I would run around with Michelle and the Rangers, or you guys. If I had a choice, I'd be like, where do you want to go? Let's go check it out. If I had a choice.
Absolutely. We would
But I
do that
can't.
with you. We
Yeah.
would. It's just it's a fascinating experience. And I didn't expect what I got when I was up there in Toronto and gotten to know all the UFO and Bigfoot investigators, and their calm spirit was really what grounded me while we were up there. And having met them, and it's been wonderful to have you on our show today, and we want you back, just to let you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I got
great to meet
more
you.
tales from the crypt, I guess.
I love it. I love it. We'll have you back
Yeah.
on sooner than
I'll try to
later.
put together some in advance, some of the footage and stuff that I
Okay.
think is pretty compelling that we ran into, that just to check it out, talk about it, right?
Yeah, we'd love to do an investigation with you. Maybe we'll plan that sooner than later.
Yeah, I would love that. I really would love that.
Yeah, we can go all over in the Navajo Nation. You'd probably get a lot of
I'd love that.
yeah, we'd love to take you down there.
I would. That's been on my bucket list for a while. So for real.
Okay, let's
For
tap
real.
that one. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for everybody here being on the show today. We have gone over, but it's wonderful. I think for you, James, we're going to need a couple hours.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
have
do
me on
it.
as often as you want. We'll put stuff together and we'll chop it up.
Okay. Anybody else? Any last words? Any last comments?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, James. Like, I've been listening in the background, just in awe, just like some of the experiences, and just, yeah, your intention and the authenticity really shares. And I was just listening to the stories with a big smile, because each story you had opened up different layers of experience for myself, kind of going through what I went through, because I went through drug addiction at one point in time and went into more of myself, more my self-faith. So yeah, great to meet you, James, and thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. Great to meet you too, Laura.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Laura's
We'll
on
see
mute.
you guys next week. Same channel.
Wait, Laura, get the last word, and you're on mute.
Go ahead.
There you go, Laura. Talking stick.
Everybody, like and subscribe, please, because that will really help get this beautiful message out there. If it resonates with you, then we want you to find the Paranormal YouTubes. So fabulous. Thank you.
Subscribe, everybody. Help them out. Yeah.
Thank you, James.
All right, guys.